Hello, welcome back. It's the Produce Moms podcast, and today's a great day because we are doing what is undoubtedly the fan favorite here at the Produce Moms podcast, and that is one of our women's roundtable discussion episodes. And we have two of these great participants for 2026 with us today, Danyel O'Connor and Meghan Diaz. And we are so excited for them both to join us. We're going to have a great conversation. We're going to really lean into continuation, sort of the attention economy discussion that we had during our last Women's Roundtable that these two great guests could not be part of. But we're really going to take it, I guess, a little bit more niche. We're going to talk about how that attention economy comes into play as we really think about reshaping food innovation, really changing consumer behaviors, driving specific category sales. Certainly, we're going to talk about fruits and vegetables because, hey, that's what we do here at the Produce Moms podcast. So with that, Meghan, we're glad you're here. We'll let you say hello first, and then we'll pass the mic over to Danyel for her greeting.
Yes, hello, everybody. Excited to be here to talk with Danyel and Lori. We have some great topics here. Reminder, I'm from Sprouts Farmers Market, so coming and representing the retail side of the business. And excited to talk about driving consumption in produce, as always.
Love it. Thank you, Meghan, for being here. And Danyel, this actually, I should have said it at the top of my intro remarks. Danyel recently shared something on LinkedIn where it was like the light bulb went off for the entire theme of today's discussion. So, Danyel, welcome to the show. Share more about not just yourself with your intro remarks, but why this topic in particular resonates so much with what you're doing in your day-to-day right now.
Sure. Danyel O'Connor, CEO of Umami, which is an innovation platform for food and beverage businesses, kind of helping de-risk innovation, and just extremely passionate, by the way, huge fan of Sprouts and huge fan of what we're trying to do here with kind of increasing consumption of produce. As a mom, as somebody who's been in the food and beverage space for 22 years, just recognize that food is medicine, whether we want to acknowledge it or not when we put it into our bodies. And so being a little bit more mindful on how we use food to empower our bodies and ourselves day to day is, I think, a critical topic.
Yeah, I love that. And, two things that you talked about, de-risk, we'll get to that. And then certainly the food is medicine. Let's go ahead and lead with that. So there is a lot of noise around diets and what's considered healthy right now. Mm-hmm. We've got from a national standpoint, I don't remember a time, Danyel, where there has been such a keen consumer awareness for healthy lifestyle. It is everywhere. It's in all forms of media. It doesn't matter if you pay attention to pop culture or politics. Like, we're talking about healthy lifestyle. So how are you seeing consumer perception of diets evolve, and how does this impact, the way food shows up in the grocery store and specifically in the produce department?
There's some interesting facts that I surfaced in LinkedIn and that I heard at Future Food Tech that kind of dropped my jaw. One was that 81% of consumers in the U.S. feel that they are eating healthy diets. And the other is that 47% of American consumers are actually obese. And so there's this disconnect, I think, with what people feel they're doing or think they're doing and then the results of what they're doing in their life. You're seeing this convergence of food is medicine or pharma and food when you think about GLP-1s and how consumers are using them to help regulate cravings and also support other health concerns that they may have. Now, I think one of the stats says 15% of adults in the US are using GLP-1s in some format or fashion, and then that's growing 30% year over year. And so that's going to just drastically change the landscape of food consumption.
And Danyel, I just interviewed someone who is a food economist and a professor at Michigan State, and he teaches like a food economics class. And he was talking about how the food economy is responding to GLP-1s. Like it is really one of the biggest contributing factors to so much. And I actually would say if you consider all of the Like the stuff from med spas, the stuff that's, a little bit like not regulated and not sold through traditional pharmacies, I bet it's a lot higher than 15%.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a prediction that 1 in 4 households will have what is considered kind of the patient consumer, where food is actually part of like how they're dealing with their health and wellness.
So interesting. So, Megan, how do you respond to those stats, with what you're seeing at Sprouts and the strategies and everything that you're driving for the way Sprouts make sure that everyone can get as much fresh produce as they want in that grocery basket?
Yeah, Sprouts has been consistent. I've been with Sprouts for 10 years, and we've been consistent on our journey to help people eat and live healthy lives, regardless of what's going on. GLP-1 was just, a new trend as of recently. So I think for us, we're always focused across the store on what we can do to help people. I think, your original question, Lori, going back to like how has healthy and diets evolved, for me it's really hard to say evolved, because I think there's more influence than evolution happening in what we're seeing, right? And if you think back decades ago, the government was that one source of truth of what healthy really meant, whether it was the pyramid or whatever schemes came before that. I think today there's a lack of trust in both policy and the influence of social media and whatnot that are making it hard to really figure out what does healthy mean. And so I think that's a hard question to answer on, like, have we defined what healthy means? Do people in America know what eating healthy is? Because Danyel, those stats, clearly there is a disconnect either in action and attitudes, or attitudes and actions, or just the plain simple understanding of what does eating healthy actually look like. Is it portion size, or is it, in what you eat or how you consume it? So I think that there's no like one standardization of what healthy is anymore. So for us, it's really hard to, serve a population where there could be multiple, multiple perceptions of that. So I think we just stay course in what we know we do really well at Sprouts, and it's showing up with, specifically in produce. How do we have fresh? How do we have local and regional products? How do we bring innovation that really focuses on customer attributes that make produce fun and exciting, like through flavor or through, different methods of eating it. So I think for us, stay course. Let's try to figure out what exactly does healthy mean, and let's get the whole country on board with what that means.
Well, I do think that, from our point of view, we certainly all beat the drum that healthy is fruits and vegetables, and that's something that I've said it so many times in various media interviews and here on this show. I say all roads for wellness begin and end in the produce department. That's something that I've just kind of started saying over the years, and I say it all the time. But I definitely am not the type of person who thinks that healthy is only found in the produce department, though. I mean, Danyel, what's anything you'd like to add to that? You've worked with everything. You've worked with center store. You've worked with frozen foods. I think that, yeah, of course. Yeah. Like the shopper experience and the way we all stock our home fridge, it's not just the produce department.
Yeah. I think, healthy is relative as it's defined by category to a certain degree. And I think this is where we talk about retailers and producers having the ability to influence what happens in the world today. It's like, if you don't make it, it doesn't go on shelf and people can't consume it. And there's a level of responsibility that I think goes with that outside of just economic benefit for businesses. And I'm not saying we don't support all businesses and how they want to approach product development, but at the end of the day, we as citizens of this society should serve people food that we would want to eat or want to feed our families too. Yeah. And that's what we should be putting on our shelves, and that's what consumers should hopefully be buying. And yes, there's maybe a broad spectrum of what's acceptable or generally acceptable to consumers and what they know to be true and healthy, but we also have responsibility as consumers to think about moderation and what we're consuming, because just because I sell a cookie in a cookie aisle doesn't mean that I know you're eating a box of cookies or ice cream and a box of cookies and a jug of orange juice and a bowl of cereal. And so these things all compound over time. And so each decision has an impact, a compounding impact.
Right, right. So, Danielle, we'll keep the mic with you for a minute, then we'll come back to Meghan because I definitely want her thoughts on this too. But so it's obvious through those stats you shared that behavior and intent they're not always the same. You know, I wrote down 81% think they're eating healthy, 47% are obese. That's the data that you shared from the Future Food Tech event that you recently attended and spoke at. So. They're not matching. You know, there's a disconnect somewhere. So how do you think that factors that really drive that we know we have abundant research that convenience, cost, experience, flavor, those are attributes that really drive consumer behavior. Do you think that those are that healthy's in the mix with those, or what do you think? Like how do you think that these various attributes are driving consumer behavior?
Yeah. I believe that we all have aspirational behaviors. Like I would tell you, I want to work out 5 times a week, but I don't always work out 5 times a week. And so like, what I say I want to do or how I wish I was behaving isn't always exactly how I behave. And I think that that's just true across the board. Outside of that, I think there's like a general decision tree to consumption. And it goes something like, I need sustenance, right? Or there's some reason in which I want to consume food. And that is either going to be, you know, a snack, it's on the go, or it's a meal. Like what is the amount of time I can consume that in? And what is the setting in which I can consume that in based on constraints in my life? And then it's kind of a savory or sweet. And then there's this value proposition and delivery. And I think, you know, there's benefits that are associated with value oftentimes in our food economy and what we see on shelves. And so like cleaner ingredient, better for you foods tend to come at a higher cost. And so your economic position may help define that depending on those moments or how frequently those moments occur in your day. And then the same goes kind of with the hierarchy of those decisions. Like value may be a primary decision driver after you decide that you need food, not location and convenience, because you don't have the ability to afford convenience. And then when you afford convenience, you may not have the ability to afford convenience that's healthy. And so I think our economic position can also define how we consume food or why we consume the foods we consume, as well as kind of the like constraints around our daily consumption from a like place time.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's so true. And I actually, I think that that's not brought up enough. You know, I feel like if I had, you know how you always have the adage like, oh, if I only had $1 for every time someone said, like on the Produce Moms podcast, I would say if I only had $1 for every time someone brought up GLP-1s on this show, we would, you know, I don't know, I'd be in Cancun or something right now. But I now it is, when I listen to you talk and say that, Danielle, I'm like, gosh, we need to talk more about those economic constraints that each household has, because that also affects all these different variables that people typically or lately are just hitching to the GLP-1 discussion. And that includes things like portion sizes, you know, purchasing fresh foods, you know, are you buying things because they're on sale or because you want to eat them? You know, those are all things that really it comes
calorie. Like I think that fresh produce, and I am a huge fan of fresh produce. We eat a ton of fresh produce in our house, but we're privileged in that we know what to do with it and we can afford it. But a lot of times fresh produce is, you know, 60 cents per serving, and higher processed foods are 30 cents per serving. And then if you think about the caloric density of those processed foods, like people are getting more calories, which can satiate them in, you know, in different ways than sometimes produce can. And so there's kind of this, you know, calorie disconnect and then cost disconnect that doesn't necessarily match up with maybe desired behavior.
Right. Right. So true. Well, Meghan, let's get the mic back to you. Anything that you'd like to share as it relates to consumer behavior intent, as well as, the economics versus the GLP-1s and some of these other things that might be shifting the way, or the how and the why people are eating what they're eating?
Yeah, let's take out economics, access to fruit and
Sure.
vegetables. Like, let's take out the real issues in consumption that as a country we're struggling with, right? Take those people out of this conversation. Let's talk about the people that have the money and have the time. Why are they not choosing produce, right? And I think we have this conversation ad nauseum about convenience. And when I look at the store today, there is no shortage of fresh options that are in a convenience like option in a sense, right? We have frozen, we have canned, we have things that you could cook in 30 to 90 seconds. We have grab and go meals with so much variety today in deli and our meat department, sides that you literally just pop in the oven or you can even eat it cold. We have pre-made salads, we have salad kits. We have cut, sliced, diced, and prepared fruits and vegetables in every shape and size and ability to eat it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, and we got air fryers, we have microwaves, we have oven, we have all these things.
Right.
So what exactly about convenience is the problem? Okay, well, we already said it's about people that have time and the money here. So we understand that economic status challenges the convenience conversation. So we have options for you. You're still not picking them. The cost itself, you have the money. We already established that. And I know we're talking about like probably a quarter of the population. That's my best guess, where you have a quarter of the population on food assistance programs. You have probably close to half of the population that barely has $2,000 in their savings account. We're talking about a slim few here, but we're still talking about some folks. So what's the decision at the end of the day? I think it's not a knowledge gap. It's more so a reward gap. And this is, we're going to flow into GLP-1s, Lori. There's another topic. Food vacation.
Pay up.
What exactly is it that makes people go for an unhealthy option, right? It's a craving. It's something, I think it comes down to basic psychology. The reason you're not picking the healthier option, everybody knows that this is better for me, but I'm going to go over here. And we all are allowed to have unhealthy options in our lives. It's in balance that we have to do it, right? But I think it really comes down to the psychological influence, and that's what GLP-1 was created to do, right? It was to take away that craving. And so I think it's that dopamine hit, that instant gratification that we get from something that we desire or love. For me, it's gummies, gummy bears, gummy worms. But I think that is probably more of the challenge that we're looking at. And I think that's why the GLP-1 conversation is so interesting, is because it's attacking that root cause of the why. So I think it's more of that. We can talk about how vegetables don't taste good. I'm like, well, learn how to cook, because salt, pepper, and garlic can make anything taste at least okay in the moment, right? So, and like I said, you can learn how to cook today on TikToks, on YouTubes. There is no shortage of ways to learn how to do something, or convenience, or options for you. So I think those are almost like we're making excuses for something that we all know at the end of the day. It's a choice people are making if they have the choice to make it.
Right. So Meghan, have all great thoughts, and curious, as we think about our previous roundtable where we really leaned into talking about the attention economy, is that a dynamic that you've given much thought to as it relates to the way the types of foods people are choosing, the concept that attention is finite and attention has economic value? And when we think about how we all live today, attention is scarce. It's really it's a valuable resource that is really hard to capture. And when you think about the shopper experience in a grocery store, there is literally a sea of choices, all sorts of pricing, sometimes dynamic pricing during your shopper experience, different ways that you're receiving information. I mean, is that a concept that is something you've talked about before as it relates to shopper behavior and consumer choice?
I think that the terminology and the facade that some folk, like we saw in the numbers, 80-something% say they're healthy. The numbers say something else from medical journals. And so I think that saying that you eat healthy or talking about it is almost a status symbol or a societal like acceptance. And so I think that people use health as almost like social currency in a sense. So talking to, like talking to healthy habits, talking about how much you exercise and maybe you don't exercise that much. I think that there is a little bit of social currency in grabbing onto health, and I think that's why you're seeing more health related political campaigns, right? Right now, more than ever, we're seeing more headline grabbing from politicians currently in office, running for office, that are catching on to the Maha movements and some of the momentum behind there. So I think there definitely is a lot coming from it, and I think that we're moving into a space where it's going to become more and more relevant.
Yeah. No, it's so good. Thank you for that. All right, Danyel, let's talk about innovation. Obviously at Umami, you mentioned earlier, you're trying to, through the tool, you're trying to de-risk, that process. So innovation is not just one player. It's not just the food manufacturer. There's a lot of different stakeholders that have to come together in order for a product innovation to yield success. And success is not just, market access or shelf space, but it's actual like household penetration. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that journey and how it's not just one player, it's everyone. And feel free to elaborate on those introductory remarks you shared regarding de-risking that process, because that really moved me when you said it, and I want to hear more about what that means to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think all resources are finite, whether it's personal or inside a business, and or across the economic landscape of the consumer. And every year, U.S. food and beverage brands unfortunately waste $200 billion on wasted innovation, or failed innovation. So products that have to be removed from shelf, as an example. And so that's inefficient spending, right? That could be put towards good in our economy in some way, shape, or form. And I'm a really firm believer that, all demand lives with the consumer, and the consumer doesn't always know exactly what they want and how they want to receive it, but they know the base need that isn't being met. And I think, Meghan, you talked a little bit about this when you talked about, the produce section. And sometimes that innovation is, step change, improvement in product. Sometimes it's understanding the consumer voice, and you may have a great product, but you're not talking to them in the right way to convert to that sale and get that trial, which creates household penetration over time. And then sometimes it's blue sky, and that blue sky may not be new product, but it may be new format that meets consumer needs or the way consumers live today. And so it can look very different depending on the space you're in. I think what's really interesting to me is we have consumers that are so focused on wanting to be healthy, or at least the currency, Meghan, as you said, of being healthy. And what's wild is I think we have so much room in the produce category to speak to the benefits of produce. And so when you have those fresh products not necessarily packaged in a way that you can put claims on them, you're kind of missing out on what's selling product when people walk through the store. So you've got a beautiful display, it's colorful, the fruit smells great, it's fresh, but you're not saying in this carton of strawberries, it's, whatever your, 5 strawberries is your daily allowance of fiber. I made that up. I don't know. Don't get mad at me, Meghan. But, I think that there's a way that we could translate the benefit of fruits and vegetables to speak to the consumer's current needs, which is, how do I get more nutritional density? And I may be eating less if I'm on GLP-1s, or I may care about nutritional density, but I don't know which products to find it in. And then when we talk about that, kind of the currency of our time and energy, if nobody's telling you that, you're looking it up. And who has the time to walk through the produce department and Google, hey, I'm looking for a good source of fiber. My mom needs more fiber in her diet. What should I get? And so I think there's an opportunity through merchandising for us to improve the produce category. And I think there's a ton of innovation in just ways we can speak to convenience and use cases that benefit the consumer or more easily fit into their daily life.
Yeah, I completely agree. Meghan, anything you'd like to share on that?
No, I think Danielle touched a lot of it. When you talk about innovation being not just one part of the supply chain, I think it's living in it. You're absolutely right, and I think when you put it all on one party's shoulders, you're not going to get exactly what you want at the end of the day. The retailer is supposed to be so dialed into the consumer, and you're right. Consumers aren't going to tell you, "Hey, in 5 years, I'm going to want this, so go do what you got to do." Right? So you're supposed to be able, as a retailer, to understand where the category is going. Don't get distracted by fads, because no breeder in their right mind is going to invest in a fad. Understand growing to see what is viable. Work with great growers. Partner with great growers, because it is a big investment that you're asking growers to make. And then understand breeding. Understand the genetics, the breeding cycles, the seed side of the business, to really understand how viable are your ideas, how viable are your category strategies. And I think that there's a super big disconnect today of folks understanding both flow up and down of the supply chain. And there's a lot of folks that are just here in their segment, waiting for the next segment to tell them what they need to do or what they want. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for this industry to work better together across segments.
Yeah. And I love that you brought up the importance, specifically, obviously, as it relates to fresh produce, but I'm sure other agricultural products as well, understanding the breeding on the farm, what innovation looks like from the producer's point of view is absolutely critical. And it actually, it kind of flows nicely into one of the next topics we agreed to discuss, which is, the evolution of fresh produce. Even, taking what has always been kind of just staple commodity driven items and turning them into engaging, convenient, or even experiential. And I, as you were talking, I was like, wow, perfect example are all these different flavors of grapes, like the cotton candy grapes and the other, like the gumdrop grapes and all the different types of candy flavored grapes that have come to market. Really just kind of immediately, as you were talking and I was thinking about this next topic we wanted to discuss, I was like, that is a living example for me that really closes the loop on everything we're talking about right now. But anything else you want to share, Meghan, as it relates to like the fresh produce evolution in particular?
Yeah, I love it. I love right now because what it's doing is creating competition. It's like a race to flavor. I do think it's great to see premium offerings in categories, but I don't want the whole produce department to become premium, because then we go back to question 1 or 2 where it's like, can people afford to eat fresh? So I do love all the innovation that's focused on consumer. There's a lot of brilliant things that are happening also from genetic space with growing and yields to help our growers become more profitable. So I'm really excited about what we see today. By no means do I feel like it's slowing down. I think it's starting to ramp up very quickly because of seeing the success of, like what you mentioned, the cotton candies, the jumbo blueberries. I think that we're in a time in our society where we have way more tools, AI and such, to help us really advance what we're doing at a quicker pace. And I think that's amazing, because in farming, we don't have a lot of time and energy to waste freely. And so to be able to bring these to market quicker, I'm really excited by it. And so, yeah.
Well, Meghan, you're in Florida, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's what I thought. So Danielle and I both live in the Midwest. And I thought something that I just experienced recently while grocery shopping was the expansion of the avocado set. So this might not feel like a big deal to you being in Florida, but for me in Indiana, when I went to the grocery store and I saw 2 sizes of Hass avocados plus bagged Hass avocados plus bulk tropical avocados, I was like, wow,
Yeah.
this is amazing. Because I remember 20 years ago ish, avocados were hard to even find at retail in the Midwest, and much less multiple SKUs. So I do think that, and consumer choices, we will always advocate for that at the Produce Moms, always. But I think it speaks to a lot of different things. Just that example in particular, I thought, wow, we're catching up with some of the, like you've probably had the choice of like Hass or tropical avocados for as long as you can remember, I have to imagine, being in Florida. But for us, I'm like, wow, this is responding to our societal demographic makeup. Like the fact that we aren't just Midwesterner town full of people who, our experience with the tropics includes, vacations to the Panhandle. There are people who actually live here now in our community who are immigrants or second generation from families where that is their culture. So I do love that. I love the celebration of how the market access and landscape everywhere is changing alongside the population and the community that's shopping. But
yeah, I mean, you could put avocado on a hot dish. Yeah, that's not against the law.
Sure, why not?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Danyel. She's from the land of hot dish. I'm kind of from the land of like pork tenderloins, but
We put a lot of meat and potatoes too. I think what's really interesting about avocados, and maybe Megan, you could probably answer this better than anybody if this follows the trend line you see. But like when you see restaurant menu adoption of a specific item, it tends to translate to everyday consumption at home because people want to mimic what they're getting or what they like at a restaurant. And it's easy to try your, taco and add avocado to it and then fall in love with avocado versus buy avocados in the store. And I think that's one way we see kind of adoption of innovation, especially in ingredients or raw materials like avocado.
Yeah, and I think you're right, in vegetables particularly, you see most innovation launch in food service and then make its way to retail. Veg is really different. It's not impossible, but it's harder to launch a new innovative item and get people to buy into veg at store level. Take shishito peppers, mini sweets, microgreens, all of those items, big in food service before they came into baby broccoli or broccolini.
right.
All of those items came from food service. And so you want to talk about partnering up and, hey, can retailers and food service companies like just come together?
Yeah.
But yeah, the expansion and assortment, with avocados, I'm surprised you guys don't have gems up in the Midwest yet, but I'm sure California season you guys might get some. But
Yeah.
I think we're seeing so many great options, and the only reason we have it on the shelf is because it's penetrating the households, right? It's moving.
Right.
So I think that's a really cool indicator showing that people are intrigued. People are interested in expanding. They do want more options, whether it's organic, whether it's size, ripeness, flavor, color, whatever it may be. We have more options now than ever. It's just how do we make sure we put the right ones out there and get people to come back. We want repeat purchases, not just one to hang out and say, okay, that was cool.
Right.
Yeah.
So how long do you give a product before, like you grant it market access, put it on the shelf?
Yeah.
How long does it have to actually get those sales and that household penetration before it gets discoed?
Yeah, I don't have a formula, right?
Right.
I doubt any category manager has one either. I think it's dependent by item. It's dependent on its role in the category.
Sure.
A lot of times in innovation, everybody wants to bring in the next, jumbo blueberry and make a big splash in a category. But, in veg, if you bring in, a baby corn or an English pea, or,
Right.
a colored broccoli or something like that, it's not going to do the sales of an avocado. So I think it just depends on the item. It depends on your expectation and the role it plays within the category. Alongside, obviously it has to move enough to keep fresh. It has to be priced appropriately. If it's packaged, it has to be able to tell that story in innovation. I think that's one of the hardest things with veg is most times veg is either going to be on the wet wall or it's going to be in package. how do you get people to understand what that story is? And no, as a retailer, we're not going to tell a story with a sign for every item that we're bringing in, right? We'd essentially just be a billboard inside of our department of signs. So I think it depends on a lot. There's a lot of work that has to be done by everybody to make an item successful at store.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple other things that a lot of retailers consider, and maybe tell me, Megan, if this translates to the produce section too, but like basket affinity, like what else are they shopping for? Or did that item get somebody excited? Maybe it didn't convert, but you're seeing sales in that category lift overall because there's more traffic, because there was excitement drawn to the shelf. Or is it a demographic of consumer that you're trying to please? And so maybe you're not selling as much velocity, but you're getting a new customer to that category, and it's going to take time to mature, their experience in the produce section.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, we'll transition to our closing remarks. We can take it a couple different ways here. So an innovation that you really want someone to make or think the market is ready for, like something that's on your wish list as it relates to innovation, or, like really just something a little bit more high level than that, like what do you think is really going to define innovation over the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to, what people are really leaning into? I'll start if that's okay, because this is my question to ask, because I love my wish list for the produce department. I want an Olive Garden salad kit. I want to be able to, I've loved being able to buy the salad dressing and buy the croutons, and I'm like, I can't be the only person that wants to be able to open up a salad kit and put all of the components into a bowl and make my Olive Garden salad at home. So that is my wish list item for product innovation, and it has been for like a year and a half since I started frequently being able to buy the salad dressing and the croutons, which I love. So that's mine. All right, Danielle, we'll go to you, then Megan, we'll let you put a bow on this episode with your remarks and the final goodbye.
You know what? This is like not fresh produce. So I just love the idea of produce, the tentacles from the produce department going into other categories of grocery shopping. Like I love seeing like Banza, with chickpeas, or Kaizen with like lupini beans and fava beans. I like seeing Pashi with like the packaged artichoke for snacking. Yeah. And I just want to continue to see fruits and vegetables become a more regular part of people's lives, both, in daily fresh consumption and in, other kind of maybe convenience vehicles that don't require a fork.
So good. Thank you. And Megan, the mic is yours for closing remarks and to sign us off.
Yeah, I think in an innovation space, there's so much to be excited about right now, as I mentioned. I think being able to continue finding things that work for upstream and downstream is what I really want to continue to drive and be a driver of, making sure that our growers are able to be profitable, our customers are able to get a great experience every time, not just the first time or every other time, and really help get people excited. When our team is out with growers or with breeders or at trials, when we get excited about an item, you would think that we just like found gold in the sand. Like it's ridiculous how excited we get when, like, oh my God, have you had this cabbage? Like, who says that? We do, because we're really passionate about fruits and vegetables at Sprouts.
Yeah.
So anytime we get that excitement, we want that to translate both upstream and downstream. And so we're really excited to continue to be drivers in that space. I think that there's a lot to watch in the next couple of years with breeding styles as we talk about genetics. And I also think from a regional growing perspective, continuing to see regional food systems expand, not contract. I think that's super important for us as well, to be able to talk to flavor and freshness. So that's what
I love that.
Yeah.
There's always,
Yeah.
we were just talking about the avocados, and I'm like, we're shipping pits and skins, from Jalisco, Mexico up to, Chicagoland. It's hard to balance wanting to eat all that fresh, delicious produce year round whenever we want it, and the idea that, logistically it's extremely challenging to do efficiently and effectively. And then, of course, when we went through COVID times, the disruption you see in supply chain. So, like, kudos, Megan, to you and your team for managing what you have to manage on a daily basis so effectively.
No, thank you. We're a bunch of passionate produce nerds, and we gladly wear that title. So anytime you guys want to talk produce, we are. There's plenty of us to chat with you on it. But yeah, Lori, I'll tie us off here. I think today's conversation, it's fun to tickle the brain a little bit around conversations with innovation, and how that intersects with the reality of the health world and where healthy trends are going. I think from all different sides of the industry, not just produce, there is a massive focus on what's next and how do we capture that customer. Danyel, I know you're across all departments, but I really hope produce continues to come in those top spots and keep top of mind with consumers, because we all need to eat more fruits and veggies. So